everyone. We are just opening up the webinar. Glad that you can join us today. Just going to let everybody filter in before we begin this. We have a very large audience today. We are so thrilled about this, and I'm sure you're going to really enjoy this panel discussion, and we're so grateful that our panelists could be with us today. We're actually nearing the 100 people mark, so we're over. So we're just going to let a few more people in. I mean, we're going to let everybody float in, and it looks like we're good to go. So again, welcome to our Focus Forum. Thank you for sharing your lunch hour with us. Our topic today is progress on Blueprint 15. I'm Rita Riker, president of the board of Focus Greater Syracuse. I'm pleased to welcome you to our forum and delighted that our expert panelists can join us today. Sharon Owens, Mikki Anderson, William Simmons, and Stephanie Pasquale. They will be formally introduced in just a moment. We're pleased to announce that there's very high interest, as I sort of alluded to earlier, in our forum today with over 250 registrants. We even had to increase our Zoom subscription for this forum. And we were happy to do that. We're scheduled for 1 hour today, and we'll be recording today's session. Our panelists will each present for about 5 minutes, followed by about 20 minutes of Q&A, where we'll address as many of your questions as possible. And thank you to those who've already submitted questions. If you have a question for our panelists, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. As I said, we'll try to get to as many as we can. Board member Brian Hoke will be monitoring the Q&A. If you're having trouble using Zoom online, please try dialing in using the alternate phone number and sign-in information included in your invitation. That information is also in the chat box. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce our moderator, Melanie Littlejohn. Melanie is Vice President for New York Customer and Community Management at National Grid. She joined National Grid in 1994 as the Director of Inclusion and Diversity for U.S. Operations, responsible for the company's overall strategy for inclusion and diversity and compliance, a mission she carries on today in community as well as business roles. She is currently chair of the Center State CEO Board of Directors, is a member of the OCC Board of Trustees, and on the board of Pathfinder Bancorp. Melanie is former chair of the CNY Community Foundation Board. In fact, I served on the board with Melanie as our chair and was delighted to do so. And she has served on the Business Advisory Council for the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, MACNY, Consensus Commission, boards at SUNY Moore School Business School and St. Joseph's Hospital, the Downtown Committee, and the Say Yes to Education Scholarship Board. I'm sure there's even more. Focus Greater Syracuse is very proud to count Melanie as one of our wisdom keepers based on her longtime leadership and support in improving life for everyone in Central New York. Melanie.
Good, thank you, Rita, and certainly a huge privilege to be here today. And one of my other affiliations is a former board member of the Blueprint 15 Board of Directors. What an esteemed panel I have an opportunity to introduce. First, I would love to introduce Sharon Owens. Sharon, certainly the deputy mayor of the city of Syracuse, and as the chief of staff to the mayor, Sharon oversees city programs and services addressing the quality of life in our own beautiful community. And Sharon has, as a part of her remit, neighborhood and community development, parks and recreation, youth programs, police, and the fire department. And as a past CEO of the Syracuse Model Neighborhood Facility, Sharon now serves on the Greater Syracuse Hopes Board, the Executive Committee, the Consensus Commission on Local Government Modernization, and of course is a graduate of Syracuse University. Sharon, turn it to you.
Thank you, Melanie. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thankful to be able to speak with you all about Blueprint 15. In addition to my role as Deputy Mayor for the City of Syracuse, I also serve as the board chair of Blueprint 15. Blueprint 15 was established in 2018. I was just reflecting on that. As a not-for-profit organization, I remember back in 2017 in a conversation around learning about the purpose-built community model, which our colleague and friend Mikki Anderson is going to talk about a little later. But at that time, we were learning about purpose-built and its holistic approach to neighborhood revitalization. Everyone is focused on the housing, as rightfully so, but also the health and wellness component, as well as the cradle to grave look at education. So it's a three-leg stool of that model. And as we were looking at the city of Syracuse and discussing purpose-built, and actually had to become a candidate to be in the next affiliate, we really wanted to look at what part of our city we thought that purpose-built could be, the model could be a game changer in our community. And obviously the big 800-pound gorilla in our community for many, many years has been the 81 project. And so when we looked at the opportunity of partnering, we knew that the Housing Authority was in the position to really look to redevelop its footprint of the numerous properties that they own and operate. And so Blueprint was established in 2018 for the purpose of serving as a partner for the redevelopment of what we call the East Adams neighborhood. And the boundary for our organization is north to East Adams Street, south to Colvin, east to State Street, Salina Street, and bordered by Allyn Street, west to, Salina and State Street, and then bordered east by Allyn Street, where the highway is. So obviously, when you look at that area, it is the development of the housing there that's owned and operated by the Housing Authority. Blueprint 15 is a partner with the Housing Authority, who is the owner of that, of all of that property, all of that land is owned and operated by the Housing Authority. So we look to serve as a partner with them in a community engagement and in a process of looking at the master planning of what that footprint and that redevelopment of the housing owned property will look like. But that is not just where Blueprint stops. We're looking at how do we support property owners all along that corridor, many homeowners along particularly the eastern side of the viaduct. People pay a lot of attention between Adams and King School, but beyond King School, going south, many parcels and lots where there are homeowners, existing homeowners, rental properties. We're looking at how we can also help individuals within that footprint continue to live in that footprint, and whether it continues to be residents of this newly transformed and amazing property of the owned and operated by the Housing Authority, or if they're interested in transitioning to home ownership, which many of them may be. Our role is to partner with the Housing Authority, with the Syracuse City School District. We've been in conversations with the YMCA, who has an amazing new director that I have the pleasure of meeting, to continue to look at how can we, first and foremost, engage the residents in that community. Yes, it is the tenants, but it's not just the tenants. And I want to be clear about that. It is individuals who are stakeholders and residents and generationally have been residents in that community for decades, who are proud of the community they live in, want to continue to be in the community that they live in. And Syracuse and Central New York, it's no secret, and we don't hide the fact as a community that we have not been good at this. We have not been good at development without displacement. And there's been a history of that, starting with the very highway that we're looking at now. So Blueprint is very much focused at working with our community, working with the residents, working with those individuals who have lived in that neighborhood for years, engaging them in conversations about what a transformed and invested community will look like going forward. Thank you, Melanie.
Good, thank you, Sharon. Next up, Mikki Anderson. Mikki is a seasoned and passionate community development professional whose career has been intentionally focused on affordable housing development, community engagement, and capacity building. In her role as Vice President at Purpose Built Communities, Mikki provides pro bono consulting and technical assistance to local leaders implementing on Purpose Built's proven neighborhood revitalization strategy designed to create a healthy mixed income neighborhood with pathways to prosperity for the lowest income families. And prior to joining Purpose Built Communities, Mikki served for more than 13 years as Vice President of Development for the Michaels Organization, one of the nation's largest owners and developers of affordable housing. During her time at Michaels, she played an integral role in the development of more than 1,600 affordable and mixed income housing units. Ms. Anderson's received a BA in English from Northern Illinois University and completed extensive postgraduate studies in housing and community development at the University of Illinois at Chicago and through the Chicago Rehab Network's award-winning Community Empowerment Series. Mikki, welcome.
Thank you so much. It is an absolute pleasure to join you guys to tell you a little bit more about Purpose Built Communities and our partnership with Blueprint 15 that we are absolutely excited about and making a change for the East Adams neighborhood in Syracuse. So a little bit about Purpose Built Communities. As Melanie said, we are a nonprofit organization and we're made up of a dedicated group of community development professionals who provide pro bono consulting services to local community leaders across the country who are interested in implementing our model for holistic community revitalization. Now, the basis of our work actually began back in 1995 when local Atlanta real estate developer and philanthropist Tom Cousins set his sights on changing the conditions of one of the poorest and most disadvantaged neighborhoods in Atlanta, where the Eastlake Meadows public housing redevelopment was located. His vision for the neighborhood was comprehensive. It included better housing, better schools, thriving businesses, all of which were not there at that time. And so his efforts led to him partnering with the Atlanta Housing Authority, with resident leaders, education advocates, business leaders, and others who could help him realize that vision. He founded the Eastlake Foundation to ensure that the work that was happening was being coordinated, that it would continue and that it would be long-term. With the success of what is now Eastlake Village, which is one of the most preferred neighborhoods in Atlanta, came the desire to replicate that model in cities across the country. And in 2009, Purpose Built Communities was the vehicle that was created to help him accomplish that goal. And today, we currently have 28 network members in 24 cities across the country. Now, our model for redevelopment seeks to break the cycles of generational poverty through coordinated and targeted initiatives that fall under three pillars. First, high quality mixed income housing. Second, a cradle through college educational pipeline. And what we call community wellness. That can mean physical wellness, but it also means all of those things that all of us want in thriving communities. It means thriving businesses. It means places to buy quality groceries, boys and girls clubs, those sorts of things that we all want in our communities. So research confirms that where you live impacts how long you live. And we also know that poverty and place are intricately tied together. So we work in neighborhoods of concentrated poverty, which have dire implications for children and disproportionately impacts children of color. So research also continues to affirm, though, that a place-based approach, like the one that Purpose Built employs, is the most effective strategy for improving upward economic mobility and health outcomes. So absolutely key to our model, though, what we call the secret sauce, is the role of the community quarterback. And that is an organization like Blueprint 15. The community quarterback is typically a newly formed nonprofit whose sole role is to act as a catalyst, a convener, and a coordinator of the community efforts so that the work that's happening in communities isn't being done in silos. So, you know, in many instances, in most instances, there's not a lack of work being done in communities, but most often the efforts can feel sort of disparate and not properly aligned. And that's why organizations like Blueprint 15 are so important. It's because their role is to coordinate, and the role is long-term, right? So by applying our holistic model to other areas of concentrated urban poverty around the nation, Purpose-Built Communities is helping local leaders make a positive impact in this country's neighborhoods that are made most vulnerable, much like East Adams neighborhood in Syracuse.
Great, thank you, Mikki, and certainly welcome. Next on our esteemed panel is Bill Simmons. Bill Simmons is the executive director of Syracuse Housing Authority, and Bill is a native of the Bronx and has lived in Syracuse since 1975. While working full-time at New Process Gear, he achieved a law degree from Syracuse University and is a member of the New York State Bar Association. He has served the Central New York community in many, many ways, such as the director of airport services is at Syracuse Hancock International Airport, on the Syracuse City, I cannot speak today, on the Syracuse City Board of empowering the Syracuse City school system, as well as the 5th District Common Counselor for Syracuse, a position of which he held for 8 years. In 2007, Mr. Simmons became the executive director of the Syracuse Housing Authority, and he is responsible for overseeing over 2,400 public housing units, 184 tax credit units, 97 units of affordable housing, and the administration of contracts for approximately 3,600 rental units as a part of the authority's Housing Choice Vouchers program. His mission is to provide safe and affordable housing, quality for those in need. Bill also serves as the president of the New York State Public Housing Authorities Directors Association, and strives to empower individuals to create an environment wherein everyone wants to live, work, and build livable communities of quality in education, health, safety, and welfare, while helping to provide relief to the poor, distressed, and underprivileged. Bill Simmons.
Yep. Thank you, Melody, and thank you, Focus, for this forum. We're always very excited to talk about this project that we've been working on for a long time, and looks like we're ready to really make some real significant strides on the project. As Melody said, I've been here at the Housing Authority since 2007, and this project is interesting how it all came about, because for the past 15 years, the Congress and Department of Housing and Urban Development have gradually, on a national level, began to divest itself of investing in public housing. Today, there are some $70 billion of backlog of capital needs in housing authorities across the country, and we're losing units, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of public housing units throughout the country annually. And so it was back in 2010 when housing authorities allowed when HUD allowed housing authorities to use public-private financing to address their housing backlog needs. And as you know, in Syracuse, Pioneer Homes is one of the first housing authorities in New York State, built in 1937, and one of the first 5 in the country. And so we had this opportunity to address our physical and capital needs through mix of public and private financing. But we also had at this time a major issue in Syracuse, as you had through all of upstate New York, this whole issue of deconcentrating poverty in our neighborhoods. So there were a number of initiatives that we were really looking to address in this project. But the real item that got everything going was the I-81 project. Back in 2014, when we really started talking about what options we were going to do with the I-81 viaduct, the Congress of New Urbanism had invited myself at the time, Council President Van Robinson, and Andy Maxwell from the Driscoll administration out to San Francisco to look at the Embarcadero neighborhood that was redeveloped after the bridge collapsed in the earthquake in San Francisco back in 1989. And it was after that visit that it opened up my eyes as to, okay, if I-81, if we're going to have a major disruption in this neighborhood, how do we leverage this opportunity for the residents? I knew that in the area of eminent domain, if that was to come into play with this project, that we would have you really kind of lose out in that respect. But in talking to the Congress of New Urbanism, they said, look, Bill, you might want to look at the 1993 President Clinton executive order about environmental justice, which addresses what happens, how you get amenities and benefits for a community when there's a major disruption for communities of predominantly color and low income. So it was out of those 3 initiatives that we, back in 2016, we commissioned the study for master planning for this neighborhood with Gilmore and Keene. And in talking to the residents, they wanted to have, a highly amenitized neighborhood with a holistic approach. And they wanted to agree to mixed income and a different kind of housing stock. But most importantly, they wanted to break up the super blocks and recreate neighborhoods and streets that were safer, walkable, and more livable. And so that was the study that we did back in 2016. And in addition, we had been working with I-81, with the stakeholders group, and trying to influence the outcome of having a street grid option. And when the I-81 were looking at either rebuilding the viaduct or bringing a street grid or making it wider, we advocated that the best option would be the street grid option. It was consistent with and complemented our master plan from 2016, reopening up the streets, because this property was right in the middle of the urban core, close to downtown and the University Hill area. And so we really was pushing the DOT for the street grid option. In fact, we commissioned some drawings. Bob Haley remembers that we approached him and his group, of urban design, to commission some drawings as to what the neighborhood could really look like as we talked about a street grid option for the neighborhood and throughout the communities. And so that was very instrumental, because it wasn't until that time that DOT folks decided to look at how can you really put a street grid in. They thought that the rail station was an impediment to putting in a street grid, but we showed them the connections that could be made with the existing street grid, and also having them realize that we were looking for traffic flow through the neighborhood. That was the concept of the plan that we came through with in 2016, and that really influenced the DOT to take a serious look at the street grid option. So all of those confluences got us to where we are today in 2016. And as the deputy mayor mentioned, Sharon said that Blueprint 15 came into place as a not-for-profit in 2018, and we began that partnership to embrace the purpose-built model and getting highly amenitized, holistic approach for the residents on the footprint.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Bill. Certainly last but not least is Stephanie Pasquale, Director of Neighborhood Advancement for the Allyn Family Foundation. Stephanie has an extensive record in community housing and family development services and experience for her role at Blueprint 15. She earned a Master's of Public Administration and Bachelor's of Art in Policy Studies at the Maxwell School at Syracuse University, where she later served as an adjunct faculty member for more than 10 years. Stephanie was Commissioner of Department of Neighborhoods and Business Development for the City of Syracuse. Her housing and community development experience includes work from Home Headquarters, Worcester Community Housing Resources, and the United Way of Central New York. Stephanie?
Thank you so much, Melanie, and thank you, Focus, and my fellow panelists for this opportunity. So glad there's so many folks here today to learn more about what we've been up to. You heard a little bit today about what is a community quarterback and about Blueprint's history from those who went before me. But I knew that from some of the questions that came in is, well, what the heck have you been up to in the last year and what lies ahead? So I thought I'd talk a little specifically about what Blueprint 15 as an organization has been up to. Well, first and foremost, I wanted to highlight that I know at the core of a lot of the questions that we received both for this presentation, but also from the community is around displacement and preventing displacement. And our organization was fortunate to be selected to receive a $1 million grant from the Enterprise Community Partners through grants through the Attorney General's office to do just that. So out of 10 cities in New York State that were selected for this program, we were the only initiative that was selected to apply to use these resources to develop a set of strategies to prevent displacement in a neighborhood. So this is the only neighborhood-based anti-displacement strategy that was funded. So we're really excited about launching those initiatives that took a year of required meetings. Sharon was on our team, and it was and 2 members of Bill's team from the Housing Authority, in addition to the NYCLU, the New York Civil Liberties Union, and we had a resident on our team, as well as other reps from the city of Syracuse. So that grant, that initiative resulted in allowing us to hire and build our capacity and to build some staff. So we were so fortunate to recruit and find an incredibly talented Director of Community Partnerships, Arlena Harris, who's overseeing all of our engagement efforts, including a Neighborhood Navigators program that is hiring residents right in the community to connect, to build trust, to build relationships, and to build communication mechanisms so that when we have opportunities for the neighborhood to get involved, Bill mentioned in master planning or in the implementation of some of these initiatives, we have a really good infrastructure to do so. But it's slow and it's messy and it's hard, and that's what we're building, and that's what we're doing every day. So over the last year, we've held several socially distant and safe outreach events that we've touched over 525 residents in the neighborhood, in that footprint Sharon described. Particularly around food security. Obviously, throughout the pandemic, that was identified early on as folks really did not have, access, whether it was transportation or other resources, to connect with fresh fruits and vegetables and other healthy foods. So we've held 4 pop-ups in the neighborhood at various locations. We've done door-to-door, thousands of door-to-door outreach with getting people to come out to those events, to connect with people while they're waiting to pick up their items, to really talk through, is there anything you can use and have help with, in addition to providing some COVID-related resources and other sort of giveaways and tabling by lots of other organizations. And we couldn't have pulled it off. It truly has been a partnership to pull those events off. And we're really grateful for all of our partners in that effort. We've been holding and encouraging throughout that process. Folks have identified both workforce development and other areas of interest, to build their wealth and to build their economic mobility. And so we've held some home ownership orientation workshops and follow-up to connect people to both the one-on-one services and the group services that are offered by organizations like Home Headquarters and the Financial Empowerment Center, to get people towards that goal and really feeling that they're making progress if that's something that's important to them. We've been holding tenants' rights and eviction prevention workshops in partnerships with the Volunteer Lawyers Project, and really trying to establish meaningful connections with other service providers in the footprint, such as the RISE Center, to do all of this work. Been having our navigators and Arlena have been conducting door-to-door outreach. Our board members and volunteers have also helped with that effort, collecting life needs assessment information and really talking with people and following up when we say we're going to follow up. If they have questions we can't answer on the spot. We've been working with the Syracuse City School District and just the incredible doesn't cover it, but the incredible educators at STEAM at Dr. King Elementary, wonderful, to pursue a purpose-built schools model of project-based learning there, and coordinating and helping them build that effort. We've also, obviously, throughout this, have been connecting with potential funders at every level, local, state, national, on our short and longer term opportunities to bring the vision, to bring what residents want to see in this neighborhood to reality. So a common theme there, I think, is building. We're building infrastructure, we're building connections with the community, building relationships and connecting with funders and other organizations that perhaps have never looked at investing in this neighborhood before. We have temporarily set up official shop in the Educational Opportunity Center. Thanks so much to Tim Penix and his crew for allowing us to use some space and to learn more about the amazing services that they offer. But that we're there until the fall, where we hope to move into a currently vacant mixed-use building on the corner of Burt Street and Montgomery that we're working with a developer from the neighborhood who's looking to have, it's a mixed-use building with apartments above, and hopefully our Community Resource and Support Center, our forever home, on the first floor. We've been partnering with the city of Syracuse and home headquarters to build 4 new single-family homes, maybe 6 this summer, in the footprint, and connect residents from the footprint in that goal towards homeownership. We know that road, there's a runway to homeownership that some people drive 30 miles an hour and some drive a little faster, but we know and we're committed to ensuring that if that's someone's dream and vision, that we can connect them to that opportunity. As part of that enterprise grant, we've established and are setting up the parameters and working with residents to identify guidelines for a barrier reduction fund that will help during any potential displacement that's a result of the redevelopment going forward. And as those, some of the additional resources for people to ensure that it's the least disruption as possible. We've been working with the city to pilot a housing trust fund in this neighborhood that would incentivize and renovation of properties, of vacant or distressed properties in the area, and creating new and sustainable home ownership and small scale quality rental development in the neighborhood, and really provide opportunities for residents to build familial wealth and neighborhood revitalization as a common goal. We continue to build our team to hire new neighborhood navigators, residents from the area, and some other, one other full-time position we have available for a community development coordinator, to help us bring all of these projects forward. And I just want to highlight, I've served on a lot of boards of directors, and just because our board chair is on the call, Bill's on our board, I mean this so sincerely. We have an incredibly engaged and committed board that there are folks on our board that have a million things to do, not just at our board meetings, but in between. And every single one is contributing to this effort in ways small and large. And we are just so fortunate to have such a committed group. Melanie was on our board. Thank you so much for your contributions and your ongoing support. But really, I think it's a testament to this idea, this strategy, this leap of faith that this group comes together all the time to say, what can I do? How do I roll up my sleeves and contribute to this effort? But if I could just leave with one last thought, most of all, what centers us with the board and the staff, we want residents to feel in their bones and know that we know this is a long-term effort, but we are here for the long haul, and that their voice, hopefully they feel it is heard, that they are part of the prosperity and what is going to continue to happen. It's what matters most, and that this organization is committed to delivering on any of these promises made. Back to you, Melanie.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Mikki. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Sharon. And, part of this discussion today is really about the questions and the level of engagement. So why don't I turn it over to Bill, who is going to help step us through all of the questions and the the dialogue? Bill?
It's Brian.
Brian, oh my goodness, Brian, see, not enough coffee. I can't speak and I can't remember who I'm tossing to, so.
My title on the
Thanks,
middle
Brian.
school said brain for a while, but I've changed it. But I take that as a compliment, whoever put that in. So I'll add my thanks to everybody on the panel. Very interesting, well presented, covered a lot of the questions that we got in advance. Certainly thank you to everybody joining us here, all the attendees. We've had an outpouring, not just of attendance, but of folks sending in questions in advance. So thank you for that. Unlikely we'll get to all of them. Usually we ask folks who are present to send in questions. You're welcome to, but chances are we won't get to the ones we've already had so far. So in no particular order, and aimed in at first here to no one in particular, some general questions, I think really stemming from the mission statement of the organization. How has the bold vision been developed? What does it include? And what is holistic about this redevelopment process? Anybody care to comment on that?
I'll start by saying that the organization and its partners have zeroed in to the legacy of particularly the 15th Ward and the atrocity that happened to that community with the erection of I-81.
Mm-hmm.
So as we look as an organization to be bold, the first part of that bold is to acknowledge what happened before and that it just cannot keep happening, whether it was 81 or what happened over on Fayette Street with Kennedy Square. Development is wonderful for our city, but not at the sake of its residents. So that is the first bold envisioning of this. The other boldness about it is that we're looking and we're taking on the principles of a national model that has been successful and purpose-built. I say this to the members of the Blueprint staff and the board all the time, is that we have the benefit of 23 other affiliates to look and see how they've done it, to embody what we like about some of the measures, and to basically cherry pick from the top of what they have done to work best for the city of Syracuse. I'm biased, just like everyone, that, you know, we're kind of obnoxious here in Syracuse because we're really proud of our city, and no, you know, there's no other place on the planet like Syracuse. So you can't cookie cutter any model and place it in this community. But the benefit of having 23 other organizations, and Mikki, if I got that wrong, correct me, to be able to communicate with, to give us some feedback of what would they have done differently in our place, where I just said to Stephanie not too long ago, we're a toddler organization. We're getting our legs under us and then we're ready to run. So we want to ask some mature organizations, okay, we're ready to go. What did you learn from your experience? The boldness of the housing is the biggest piece of it, because it's going to be the thing you can see and feel and have the greatest impact of people. But the educational, we've gone to communities where we've seen some amazing educational initiatives, from daycares to new high schools to middle school collaboratives, that have really looked at the education component as the foundation, not the housing, the educational component as the foundation of how to build a neighborhood and help it grow. And then not to forget the health and wellness component that is in many of the conversations people don't even know about. So again, I mentioned the why, or I mentioned any other health and wellness component. We're looking forward to what that means about green space in the community, as well as the physical attributes that can be brought to health and wellness around nutrition or physical fitness. So I think that's part of the boldness is looking out of the box. Syracuse sometimes looks at how we do things from a Syracuse perspective. And sometimes we have to look at how we do things from a different perspective and mold it to how it will fit for who we are as Syracusans.
Great, thank you, Sharon. Anybody else want to come in on that set of general questions?
Sure. I just wanted to weigh in. You know, I think that just a couple of other notes to add to this project. We have been partnering and discussing with National Grid and the Center for Excellence for the past ever since 2016 on how they can play a role on this footprint in having it become net zero as we build new housing or redevelop housing. And so those kinds of partnerships, that's the kind of thing that's very, very different and new to have net zero energy on this footprint as well. And I think what's also important is that, in this design, we're looking to have a large portion of the residents' participation in the design, more detailed design of what happens in this neighborhood. And historically, as Sharon points out, when you look at redeveloping a neighborhood and talking about mixed income, you're often talking about demolishing a neighborhood and dispersing the people. That's how they used to do in the 50s and 60s. And when you had mixed income, you talked about 80% market rate, 20% low income. No, the SHA Board of Commissioners was committed to not demolishing and dispersing, but to investing in this neighborhood and inviting new people in. And so our concept is to invest and invite so that you have one's footprint is large enough to increase the density and achieve all of those goals. So I just wanted to add that portion to the boldness of the vision.
Gotcha. Thank you. Others on this point? All right. A related question, Bill, if I can stick with you. A lot of questions from folks about how, and you touched on it certainly, and several others have, how will new and existing buildings address energy efficiency, resiliency, and human health? How will this initiative address environmental justice? You mentioned talking to the Center for Excellence and some other organizations. Are there specifics you can give? It may be premature, but is there anything in the works, or things that, Sharon, you've perhaps seen from other similar efforts? Anything you can say more on that topic of the environmental piece of it?
It's early in the process because we're over the last couple of years negotiating with our master developer, McCormick, Barron, and Salsa out of Pittsburgh, and a large part of what we're looking to do on this footprint. This project is tens of millions of dollars over a 10-year period of time, and trying to pull together the investments. We're working together to put together a competitive application for a choice neighborhood implementation grant. And what you get with those choice neighborhood investment grants, if you're successful, is a $30 to $35 million investment. And so, but that plan has to be put together with the neighbors. And so when you really talk about environment, it sort of evolves. When you talk about the high quality environmental concerns, a lot of the monies that will come from this project to build the housing will be the New York State Housing and Community Renewal. And they have a very detailed playbook on how to build housing that makes sure that they're energy efficient and lead star energy, as we did with Freedom Commons. We won an award for a lead award for the Freedom Commons project, which we built last year. It's a 9% tax credit project that includes supportive housing for a reentry population. We've entered into a grant recently with the Center for Excellence on how we may be able to put solar panels on that Freedom Commons project. The other thing, when you talk about neighborhood investment, the Syracuse University steam station is looking to revitalize that plant and spend north of $100 million in a steam station. So something that was once an obstacle or impediment to development will now become an asset. So a lot of these things are laid out, but it's really early in the game because we're just starting the planning with National Grid and others as to how some of these environmental benefits will play out.
Very good. Thank you. Others, anybody else want to comment on the environmental aspects of the project? Okay, thank you. We had quite a few questions on how the I-81 project would relate. One question, what's the timeline on the I-81 project? So anybody has an answer to that, please by all means share it. But what is, obviously it's related geographically, if not else, and certainly historically in many ways. And we want to talk about where that is now, how it affects the project, or other relationships between the I-81 issue, where it stands now, and Blueprint 15.
I can start on what we know to date from DOT about where we are with the actual project. So it's no secret that the governor kind of threw the gauntlet down recently to say that he wants the project moving in 2022. So that puts the DOT in a trajectory to really begin to move if you all remember, we're still in the draft environmental impact study phase of this. And so 2021 stopped, for the most part, the public engagement process around the DEIS because of COVID, obviously. And the model has been to have these pop-ups and people would come in. Well, we couldn't do that. So the DOT is now, challenged with how during 2021 to continue that process so we can get to the final environmental impact study that can be approved so we can move forward in the next phases of development. I'll defer to Bill as far as strategically how we continue the process, but I will say it is a delicate dance of, what the process moving forward for actually the redevelopment as close to the highway is, as opposed to, remember, the rest of the footprint that we're describing. But right now we're hoping that the DOT is on track in 2021 to at least get us through the draft environmental impact study phase.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, just to add, it's the DOT and the viaduct, I-81 viaduct has always been a wild card in this project, and we've been talking about it for 10 years, and it's been a stop and start in the project. And so, but it has a major role, obviously, when they DOT finally decided to make their decision and come out with their plans. But I think that from all indications, I think they anticipate, if in fact it turns out that the federal government agrees with the New York State that it should be a street grid, and I guess really, no matter what happens, they have to start with the bypass areas of I-81 and making those larger. And so I think we have a little time to begin the project here on our footprint, and we want to, not knowing what was going to happen with I-81 or when. We want to start over at McKinney Manor, the area that's furthest away from I-81, and it's just to begin the project, because it's going to be a project that's a 10 years or a project over a 10-year period of time. But we didn't want to wait until we had anything definitive on that area by East Allyn Street. So we think we can get started. And the other critical component to this is that when we start our redevelopment, we're going to be doing it in phases so that you build a new phasing on one section, and the residents in an old area of the development can move into the new housing, and the section where those previous residents moved out of and into the new one, you can begin to tear down that section. So it'll be done in phases in a checkerboard approach, so that this allows the greatest amount of residents to only move once and stay on the footprint if they so desire. But we think that this phased approach makes a great deal of sense for a lot of reasons, but we're going to start in the area that is furthest away from I-81. And in working with I-81 in their timeline, when they get around to doing their plans, we can kind of coordinate it with future phases of the redevelopment.
Gotcha. Thank you. Anybody else want to come in on the highway issue?
Well, sorry, Brian, I was just going to add that just from an engagement standpoint, we obviously want to partner with and continue to get residents to come out for any of those opportunities to share their perspectives, particularly as Sharon mentioned earlier, those folks also along from Dr. King Boulevard down to Colvin, to make sure that people know what's going on, how the redevelopment, particularly the off ramps, affect their lives and their world, and make sure that their voice is heard throughout the rest of that process.
Gotcha.
Brian, I'm just going to add that is like the most important issue right now for us, is that the folks who live in that footprint have been inundated with information, whether it's from the DOT stop, as Bill has talked about, with the Housing Authority and the partnerships with the Master Development and Blueprint are planning with the housing. It all seems like jumbled stew sometimes when you're trying to ferry it out. That's one role that Blueprint wants to play, to be a conduit where people can be able to ferret out the information, because it's so jumbled together, because the project is just on top of each other, but the information doesn't have to be. And so we want to be able to play a role in that, just deciphering their information and making it as straightforward as possible for people.
Gotcha. Thank you. We had quite a few questions about process, soliciting feedback, information from suggestions from residents. I think Stephanie answered every single one of them, so I have none of those left to ask, so thank you. But we did have a question, how can folks perhaps who don't live in the neighborhood, who are just concerned citizens who maybe live 5-10 miles away, how can they get involved, play a part, support this effort? Anybody care to address that?
I'll take the first stab at that. One of the things as we lay out and begin to talk about master planning, there are so many phases that you begin with the existing resident leaders and start to design a plan that helps you reach the greatest amount of engagement with the residents on the footprint. But there are also opportunities for stakeholders who are surrounding the areas, whether it's the big stakeholders, Syracuse University, Upstate, the downtown members, and EOC, these Syracuse Health Center. All these key stakeholders in the neighborhood will have a input and say, and then we'll have to really design something for the surrounding neighborhood and community for them to have an input, whether it's through a website or maybe some kind of a planning meeting to have some other new and bold ideas that we may not have thought of. So that's a good point and recommendation that we'll try to maybe focus in on as we go through our planning for other stakeholders in the surrounding area, an opportunity to give them an opportunity to have an input. We want to really, it's a big project that is going to should be great for the residents here in this neighborhood. We're really designing it to be that way. But if you can have a development, highly amenitized, mixed income, reconnect the streets that flow through the neighborhood, it could be a real traction for employers to maintain and attract employees and employees to this community, a major asset for this region. And so you have to have that input from neighboring communities as well. And we'll go through the process. It should be very extensive because, as you know, when you're working with the residents, or as Sharon pointed out, they've been inundated with neighborhood meetings, whether it's related to I-81 or the SHA footprint. But for this project that's so big and so impactful for the residents and the community, you really have to move at the speed of trust, moving as people begin to trust and understand and be confident in what we're building here is right and good for them. So we'll have to build in an opportunity to make sure that surrounding neighborhoods have a way in, but because the way this is going to be laid out, there's going to be a synergy that results from it that impacts adjacent neighborhoods and the city in general.
Very good. Speed of trust. That's a great phrase. Well, I apologize to everybody. I would like to stay for another hour, but I know we're out of time. So Melanie, I'll turn it back to you. And thanks again to all the panelists.
You are beyond correct, Brian. I could stay and hear this discussion for another hour. And I think what this discussion represents is the ongoing and continued dialogue, just to make sure perspective and information is shared widely. Certainly to continue to hear those questions that still need to be asked. I applaud the work and the effort, the vision, the collaboration, and what we will need to do ongoing. We know that this project is transformative in so many ways, and so the collective voices of many will make the difference. And so on behalf of Focus and certainly this esteemed panel, and as well as all of the folks that have dialed in today, I certainly applaud you. Now let me turn it back to Rita for final comments, and thank you, panelists.
Thank you, Melanie, and thank you, Sharon, Mikki, Bill, and Stephanie, and ditto for everything that Melanie just said about this panel. It's just been wonderful and very informative. I hope this has been an enjoyable and informative experience for everyone here. We'll be posting this forum on Focus website shortly, well, probably early next week. But so be sure to visit our website to view other virtual forums that we've hosted over the past year. You can also easily make a donation on our site if this forum has inspired you to do so. Watch for our next forum, April 16th. We're delighted to have, the topic will be higher education. And we have on the schedule President Linda Lemura of Lemoyne College and Chancellor Kent Severard of Syracuse University. And they're going to speak about their perspective on higher education and what's the issues they're dealing with at this moment. Thank you to all. I want to thank Bob Haley as well, who helped us organize this, a Focus board member, Bob Haley, who helped us organize this today. And I hope everybody has a great day and a great weekend. Take care.